On a sunny day, several people enter and exit a company. A woman with long hair enters the building and everyone admires her beauty. A guy catches her attention and asks if she is new at the company. The man says he is from the acoustics department and flirts with her by inviting her to the company party. She responds without giving him any attention and shows her wedding ring, saying she's not interested. With that, the blonde man laments that she is married and his friend consoles him. His friend introduces the woman as Fuki Tuju, the leader of the design team. The guy is shocked and his friend says she does her job well and is famous in the company. He says he didn't know Fuki had a husband and that he must be a really good guy. In the office, a man with black hair is working on his computer, his wedding ring visible. The man's name is Taiyou and he is the leader of the engineering team. Taiyou receives a task to fix a bug and is distracted while working when Fuki approaches him from behind and greets him by attacking him with her melons. Fuki is happy to see him, but Taiyou is afraid of being seen together. He types a message to Fuki on the computer. For some reason, the guy doesn't want them to be discovered as a couple. She says they won't be caught, but becomes serious as soon as someone talks to her about work. Fuki shows that when it comes to commitments, she takes on a completely different attitude. That's when it is revealed that relationships between employees are prohibited in the company. The two only learned about this rule after they joined the company. When they informed the company president that they were getting married, Taiyou and Fuki had not told anyone else that they were together. The president asks if they know about the prohibition and says that relationships interfere with companies. They didn't know about this rule, but since they are talented, the president allows them to stay in the company as long as they keep their relationship a secret. Returning from the flashback, Fuki is working when a colleague invites her to have lunch with him. She responds that she doesn't have time for that and remains focused on her work. The wife then sees Taiyou talking to a female colleague and immediately interrupts the conversation, clearly jealous. She says very seriously that it is already time for the lunch break and that Taiyou needs to take breaks. Taiyou's team member comments on how strange it is for a team leader from another department to do that. Taiyou goes back to work after being startled by her reaction. In the meeting room, Fuki stands up and says that the design department meeting is over. Leaving the meeting, Fuki heads to her husband's office and attacks him with her balloons to tell him he is doing a great job. The wife hugs him from behind and reassures him that everyone has already left to calm him down, since he is always afraid of being caught. Taiyou says he didn't even notice the time passing, and Fuki, in a soft voice, tells him to do his best at work, completely different from how she is during work hours. He says he needs to work overtime and asks if it's okay if he prepares a simple dinner. Fuki offers to do the housework and cook, explaining that her husband enjoys doing these activities. She thinks that if she does these tasks, they might have time to have fun at night and realizes she misses doing things together. At the supermarket, Fuki buys ingredients for dinner. The cashier says the total is 62.60 yen and asks if she wants a bag, but the wife says no, as she already has something to carry the groceries. She shows off an expensive handbag that is completely unsuitable for carrying groceries and doesn't seem to care about it. She then leaves, causing confusion among the people around her because of the bag. Arriving home, Fuki prepares to cook and take care of the house. She looks up recipes on the internet and washes clothes, doing her best to complete the tasks. But she is not very skilled at housework. A dress she washed shrank in the dryer and became too short to wear. Fuki also burns the food and fails once again. Taiyou arrives home at that exact moment and realizes there is no food. He smells the burning and immediately understands what happened when he sees the burger on the grill. To console his wife, the guy offers an alternative. Since they have a day off tomorrow, they can go out for dinner. The wife feels bad for messing up, but her husband seems so happy about eating out that she gets excited in a slightly different way. Fuki says with a soft gaze that they can have dinner at a restaurant, but they can also eat something at home. Taiyou can't resist, and the two end up playing around in bed. The couple engages in so many activities at night that the next day they oversleep. Another beautiful day begins in the apartment of Fuki and Taiyou. The phone alarm rings at 6:30 in the morning. Taiyou sleepily reaches to turn off the alarm. His wife rolls closer to him in bed. She smiles at him and greets him good morning. Concerned about his blonde wife's health, the dark-haired man tells her to cover up so she doesn't get cold. Fuki says that if they stick close to each other, they won't feel cold and buries her husband's face in a very special place. The poor guy panics and tries to escape from the blonde, saying they will be late for work, which doesn't please her much. As part of her morning routine, the woman takes great care of her appearance. She looks at herself in the mirror after getting ready and is clearly a very beautiful woman. The wife shouts to Taiyou that something really bad is happening, and he rushes over worried. Fuki teases him and says that the problem is that she is too beautiful. She gets very close and with a soft gaze asks Taiyou if he doesn't agree. The dark-haired man is afraid that complimenting her will lead to something. He changes the subject and asks if she changed her perfume, and the blonde confirms it. The husband then leans toward her neck, takes a sniff, and says he likes it. Fuki gets flustered by his sniff. The blonde feels a shiver and says it was lucky she woke up early today. Back at the company building, Fuki arrives distracted, looking at her phone. In the office, a very handsome guy greets her good morning. Fuki, as usual, doesn't pay much attention to him, and he compliments her perfume just like Taiyou did that morning. The woman says she only put on perfume for her husband and that only he is allowed to smell her. The handsome guy clearly has a crush on Fuki and thinks about how jealous he is. Meanwhile, Taiyou works sleepily and doesn't seem to realize how lucky he is. Later, Taiyou is walking up a staircase right behind two younger girls wearing school uniforms. He is exchanging messages with Fuki on his phone. The dark-haired man is so distracted by the messages that he doesn't even notice the students, and one of them sees him using his phone. The girl accuses him of taking pictures of them. The husband denies doing that, but the girl swears she saw him taking photos and asks why he would do such a thing. She accuses him of being a virgin and says he must be so desperate to see a woman that he resorted to taking pictures of schoolgirls. An older man arrives and asks what is going on, and the student tells him the story. At that exact moment, Fuki arrives to save her desperate husband. She clings to him and possessively asks what they want with her husband. Taiyou can't believe what is happening. One of the students admires Fuki's beauty and asks if she is really his wife, and the blonde confirms it. Looking very threatening, the wife asks again what they want with her man. The young girls feel intimidated and run away, saying they must have been mistaken. At the same time, the older man thinks that if the dark-haired man has a woman like that, there's no way he would be taking photos of teenagers. The couple arrives home. Taiyou feels relieved and thanks his wife for saving his skin, but Fuki seems distant. She tells her confused husband to wait for her in the bedroom. The dark-haired man is surprised by his wife's outfit when she enters the room wearing the uniform she wore in high school. The blouse is tight, with the buttons almost bursting, and the skirt is very short, making it clear that it's been a while since she was the right age to wear that uniform. Fuki shows off her outfit to seduce Taiyou and asks if she still looks good in a schoolgirl uniform. Lying in bed, her husband says the outfit brings back memories and asks why she is doing this. Showing off her curves, squeeze into the old uniform and sitting on Taiyou's lap, Fuki says it's because she doesn't want to lose to a younger girl. Going all in on her timid husband, the blonde guides his hand to her airbags. Excited for more, she lets Taiyou squeeze her and says they can have even more fun. The dark-haired man agrees, and his wife suddenly remembers something. Fuki offers to let him take pictures of her if he wants. Feeling very offended, Taiyou says he doesn't like that kind of thing, and half-jokingly, his wife replies that it's a shame he doesn't. On a random afternoon, two very stylish young men walk through the city. One of them comments on how a certain blonde is beautiful. The woman they are talking about is Fuki, who is very distracted looking at her phone. The kid highlights how the wife of Taiyou has certain assets that draw attention. But, as usual, the woman isn't paying attention and is busy reading a message from her husband, who tells her he will be arriving soon to meet her. The stylish guys call Fuki auntie to get her attention. They confidently invite her to have tea with them, flirting with an older woman. Just as she replies that she is waiting for someone, Taiyou arrives. He comes running and apologizes for being late. His wife is very happy to see the dark-haired man, but the scene is interrupted by the laughter of the young men. They start mocking Taiyou and ask if this loser is really the one Fuki was waiting for. One of the guys says it's hilarious that they are dating. He even adds that the couple doesn't match at all. Feeling awkward, Taiyou responds that he can't deny any of that. The younger guys ask Fuki if she isn't embarrassed to walk around with him, which irritates her due to their lack of manners. She defends her husband, saying that he may be plain looking and all tidy, but that's exactly what makes him really cool. One of the boys laughs and asks if she's joking or if she really doesn't care about a man's appearance. Fuki grows increasingly impatient and finally puts the kids in their place. The blonde terrifies them, saying that if they think wearing trendy clothes makes them cool, then they must have really messed up heads. The boys are shocked. The one who mocked Taiyou the most gets irritated and asks what her problem is, but Fuki bluntly says she would be embarrassed to walk around with them. Her husband tries to defuse the situation, saying that there's no reason to get worked up over them. But the kid is angry with Fuki and threatens to hurt her. The stylish guy says the woman needs to learn to control her tongue. Taiyou decides to act. He grabs the boy's wrist before he can lay a hand on Fuki. Taiyou gives a threatening smile and tells him not to touch his wife. He also makes it very clear that he's the blonde's husband. This shocks the boy. The kid runs away with his friend, now afraid of Taiyou, who says it's a good thing he learned self-defense for moments like this. He offers his hand to Fuki and invites her to move on. His wife smiles and accepts. Later that same day, the couple waits for a train on a crowded platform. Fuki comments that sometimes it's nice to get out of the house and go on a train date. At that moment, their train arrives and it is absolutely packed. The pair is startled and assumes it must be due to an event happening in the neighboring city. Inside the crowded train, the couple stands close together, much to Fuki's delight. Taiyou apologizes for not taking the car, but his wife doesn't mind. She happily notes that thanks to the event and the packed train, they can stick close together in public. The man starts feeling drowsy and, rocked by the movement of the train, begins to doze off. He blacks out for a few moments and ends up face first in his wife's chest. Even though she doesn't seem to mind, he suddenly wakes up in a panic and apologizes. To calm him down, Fuki strokes his hair with a smile on her face. She thanks him for working hard so that they could go on this date. She caresses her husband's face, and she says she had a lot of fun. Seeing that Taiyou is still tired, she offers her cushions as a pillow. He refuses, and they wrap up another day together. On a random afternoon, families stroll through the city aquarium. Among these families is the couple of protagonists. Fuki enjoys herself with her husband and watches various fish swimming in her tanks, pressing her water balloons against the glass. She calls for her husband to come and see all the wonders of nature. Taiyou laughs and says the blonde looks like a child. The woman is offended and argues with her husband, but he clarifies that he just meant she looks very cute. Taking out her phone, Fuki pulls her shy husband in for a photo. But before she can take it, she suddenly panics and says something is very wrong. Her shock is caused by the presence of her co-worker, who is visiting the aquarium accompanied by a woman. Taiyou recalls that his name is Tanaka, and that he is the blonde guy who had previously tried to hit on Fuki. If Tanaka discovers that the couple is together, they will have problems. The dark-haired man suggests that he and his wife sneak out of the aquarium, but Fuki doesn't want to ruin the date. She thinks it would be a waste if they don't have fun and doesn't pay much attention to her husband's concerns. Fuki then says that there are a lot of people in the aquarium and that everything will be fine even though her husband isn't very convinced. The blonde wants to watch the dolphin show. The couple heads to the packed bleachers, but Taiyou is still worried and tries to suggest that they leave. However, before he can do so, they are approached by Tanaka, who asks what they are doing there. The dark-haired man panics as Fuki's colleague starts questioning if they are together. But the blonde interrupts Tanaka and says that they are at the aquarium for work. She explains that they are gathering references for a new project and came together because they are both team leaders. And to increase Taiyou's nervousness, Fuki's colleague comments that there's no way the two of them could be dating anyway. Tanaka explains that he is on a date with the bored woman sitting beside him, saying that they just met. At that moment, one of the dolphins splashes water on Fuki. Taiyou moves to ask his wife if she's okay and nearly slips up by calling her by her first name. Fortunately, he doesn't reveal their familiarity. But Fuki doesn't even notice because she's too focused on being drenched by the water that hit her directly. The liquid trickles down her cleavage and she complains that her light-colored blouse is completely soaked. She doesn't even realize that her coworker is staring at her beach balls with great interest. But Taiyou notices and gets very irritated. He hands his wife a handkerchief to dry off. She accepts it and agrees when he tells her that she should cover up because people are looking. Tanaka takes another kind of glance. Fuki gratefully takes the handkerchief. Some time later, as the couple is returning home, Taiyou sighs in relief that Tanaka and the woman didn't realize that he and Fuki are married. His wife surprises him by jumping onto his back. Then she teasingly asks if Taiyou was jealous of Tanaka. The man becomes flustered. He starts to deny it but ends up confessing that he was. Fuki teases him, saying that it's very easy to read her husband, and embarrassed, Taiyou asks what she is laughing about. She happily responds that she thinks her husband is really cute. And when the blonde says that after going to the aquarium she's craving fish, Taiyou is left incredulous. In the distance, right behind the couple, a figure that appears to be a woman with short hair and a cross earring watches them. She does not reveal who she is, but she seems to know Fuki. A new sunny morning begins at the building where the couple lives. Taiyou explains that he is leaving early for the office because he has a lot of work to do. He is interrupted by Fuki, still wearing only a button-up shirt, and he tells her to get dressed. His wife stops him and asks if he isn't forgetting something important. With a soft gaze and showing all her beauty, Fuki asks for her goodbye kiss. Seeing that her husband is hesitant, the woman explains that this is the only time of the day they can do this since it's against company rules. In response, Taiyou moves closer. He gives her only a kiss on the cheek. When Fuki asks why just on the cheek, her husband, embarrassed, explains that if it were on the lips, he wouldn't be able to hold himself back. The husband closes the apartment door and Fuki falls seated on the floor, overwhelmed with emotions. She blushes and is frustrated by how Taiyou left her and by the way they have to act. She doesn't think any of it is fair. Meanwhile, Taiyou walks along the sidewalk on his way to work. During his route, he sees a drunk man wearing a cap approaching a short-haired woman, trying to get her to go out with him. Her appearance is familiar. The man says he doesn't want to drink alone and wants to have fun, while she just seems to want to smoke in peace. The short-haired woman tells him to go hit on someone else because she doesn't have time for him. Taiyou watches the scene closely. Then the drunk man in the cap grabs her by the wrist and says that since they're both single, they should be together. She reacts and tries to pull her arm away, and the married man intervenes in the struggle. The short-haired woman realizes that she knows him from somewhere. She looks at the dark-haired man and remembers that she saw him holding hands with Fuki. The woman thinks about how she wondered if they were together. She remembers the hands holding and the smiles. Realizing who the man is, she frees herself. She tells the drunk that Taiyou is her husband. The man in the cap gets irritated but stops bothering her. The young woman thanks Taiyou and says she was just smoking before heading to work when the guy started harassing her. He then responds that he didn't do anything, but the woman says he's wrong. She argues that everyone around was pretending not to see anything and only the dark-haired man tried to do something. With her softest and most seductive gaze, the woman tells him he was very kind for that. Embarrassed, Taiyou insists that it was nothing. They then discover that they work at the same company. The short-haired woman pulls her badge from her bag. She reveals that her name is Akine and that she is a writer on the script team. Taiyou is shocked to learn who she is. The married man says that all of her game scripts are masterpieces and that her name brings great visibility to the company. He thinks that Akine doesn't look like a writer. She explains that they've never met because she works from home. Taiyou shows her his badge and introduces himself. The woman then realizes that they all work at the same company and becomes thoughtful. Akine then leaves for work. Shortly after all this, Taiyou is walking down an empty office corridor. Fuki is hiding behind a glass door and calls him over. She then surprises him by pulling him into the hiding spot, saying that no one will see. Right after the glass door closes, Akine walks down the corridor and sees the scene. Taiyou asks what's going on. Fuki then pulls him in for a kiss on the cheek. The blonde teasingly says that it's revenge for the kiss he gave her in the morning. Inside the hiding spot, Fuki says they will continue at home and Taiyou agrees. Outside, Akine listens to the conversation and with clearly bad intentions, says that what she just discovered is very interesting. Another workday at the company begins. Fuki is walking through the corridors and passes by the smoking area. She notices a familiar face. Akine is smoking in the area. The brunette greets her and says it's been a while since they last saw each other. Fuki comments on how rare it is to see her at the company. She then explains to the blonde that she came in person to do a presentation. Fuki wonders when the last time they saw each other was. Akine says it was when the game Gal Quest was released. She mentions that she was only able to finish it thanks to the blonde's help, and Fuki comments on how the brunette used her as a reference model multiple times. When the wife mentions that it's been 2 years since then, Akine begins her interrogation. And with great malice, she asks if Fuki got married in the meantime. The blonde nervously confirms it. The writer asks who her husband is, and Fuki, trying to dodge the question, says it's someone unrelated to the company. An awkward tension sets in. Fuki tries to change the subject and asks what the next game will be about. Akine explains that it was supposed to be an isekai, but she came up with a better idea. The writer reveals that the new theme is secret office romance. Fuki regrets asking. She adds to the awkwardness by asking if changing the game at this stage won't cause problems, but the brunette looks at her in disbelief. Akine asks what kind of person the blonde thinks she is. Taiyou walks through the corridor just as his wife is flattering the writer. The man notices their presence. He sees them chatting excitedly. He doesn't realize how uncomfortable the conversation is and concludes that they get along well. The husband reflects that he will need to be careful so that Akine doesn't discover their marriage. Fuki then goes against the secrecy plan and blows a kiss to her husband, and the dark-haired man nearly dies of embarrassment. A coworker even asks if he's okay. At night, Fuki comes home in a great mood. Unlike her husband sits tensely on the couch, and when they look at each other, both become embarrassed. Taiyou calls his wife to sit beside him and she eagerly accepts. They need to break the ice. All this nervousness is because tonight is the night they plan to get intimate. Fuki takes the initiative and moves closer to her husband on the couch, asking with her soft gaze if he wants to continue where they left off. Taiyou says yes and lays her down on the couch. He sees her, full of beauty, waiting for more with a racing heart. The man carefully moves closer, and once again he only gives her a kiss on the forehead. Fuki, completely flushed, calls his name. She teases him and says it has to be a kiss on the lips. Her husband awkwardly responds that she looks really cute, and his wife interrupts the moment to sniff her own neck. The blonde asks Taiyou if she smells bad, and even though he denies it, she remains suspicious. His wife then says she'll take a bath first, and the husband is already accepting that he'll have to wait longer. That's when the bathroom door opens. Fuki, with maximum seduction, asks Taiyou if he wants to shower with her. Already under the water with his heart racing, Taiyou anxiously waits for his wife. The husband explains that they always bathe separately, so he's nervous. The bathroom door opens. The blonde arrives completely naked and announces that she's coming in. Taiyou quickly looks away, completely flustered. The poor guy is so shy he doesn't know where to look even though they're married. He stands up so that his wife can sit where he was leaning. She says she's fine and grabs some shampoo. The blonde says she's going to wash her husband's hair. Taiyou finally relaxes as she massages his head and Fuki enjoys herself. The woman asks if it tickles and the dark-haired man says it feels like he's at a beauty salon. He offers to do the same for his wife, but she says that since her hair is long, it takes more effort. She suggests they do something more interesting. The two shift positions in the shower. The husband holds a sponge. Taiyou, completely shocked, realizes he is scrubbing his wife's back. He thinks about all the steps of Fuki's bathing routine and how they take an hour every day. No wonder they bathe separately. His wife then asks why he doesn't also scrub her front side. The dark-haired man immediately agrees. He lathers the soap carefully. The soapy squeezes on her soft assets make Fuki tense up in a slightly different way. Taiyou doesn't realize that she's enjoying it and pulls away, apologizing. She says it's fine, but the poor man thinks he did something wrong. When her husband laments how difficult it is to wash someone else, the blonde praises his technique. Now Fuki is the one scrubbing Taiyou's back. The husband is confused, wondering if he shouldn't be the one behind her, forgetting that his wife is much taller than him. But there's something more important than that, and it's the fact that Fuki is pressing her water balloons against his back. The poor man doesn't know how he's going to handle it. His wife moves closer and realizes that since they use the same soap, Taiyou smells the same as always. Her husband asks if he smells bad. Fuki says no and satisfied. tells him that his scent is relaxing and that she really likes it. She laments that work doesn't let them spend much time together. The bathroom atmosphere becomes so soothing and the blonde is so exhausted that she starts dozing off. Her husband tells her that if she sleeps there, she'll catch a cold, and he realizes that she has been really tired lately. The dark-haired man turns around. He gives his beloved a kiss on the lips. To finally finish off Taiyou, Fuki stands up, proudly displaying her best qualities and announces that she's getting in. Akine slams a stack of papers on the table during a meeting in frustration. She says there's no way it's going to be like this. The brunette, incredulous, asks if her superior really wants to cut the final scene of the game just to save money. She insists that the essence of her work is a story worth watching until the end. Her superior says he understands her point of view, but he argues that a short, simple story is better than a long, complex one, and that they only need a flashy description to sell well. Fuki stands up to defend her colleague, but Akine says it's fine. The writer rises and says that, in fact, it doesn't make sense to write a long story if the players are just going to skip everything. The brunette storms out angrily, saying she'll reconsider, completely ignoring the blonde. The next day arrives and Akine walks down the street on her way to work. However, she is so tired that she yawns. She doesn't even notice a hand reaching toward her. The hand belongs to Taiyou, who grabs her just in time and pulls her back before a car can hit her. An impatient driver speeds past the two. He asks the brunette if she is okay. Akine responds that she is. When she comments on how dangerous that was, he realizes the danger of his own position. Holding her by the waist, Akine's entire chest is pressed against him. The married man quickly steps away, apologizing. The brunette comments that despite his appearance, Taiyou isn't very good at conversation, and he responds that that's not true. Akine smiles as she was just joking and thanks Taiyou for saving her life. The dark-haired man remembers to ask if everything is okay with the writer since she seems so distracted. The one explains that she hasn't been sleeping well because of the new project. Taiyou asks if she got into an argument at work, and Akine explains that it was more than that. She remembers her superior's words about long stories. The woman lets it slip that she has been wondering if her work is really good. Akine then realizes that she said more than she wanted to, but Taiyou reassures her and says that her work is really good. The dark-haired man showers her with praise, saying that what she creates is well-written and interesting. Taiyou then mentions how the game is now an isekai. The married man gives his opinion that isekai stories tend to be a bit exaggerated and easy to understand, but he says that Akine will be able to give the game a deeper meaning and that he is looking forward to it. The brunette listens carefully and smokes thoughtfully. The man then apologizes for talking too much, saying it's just because he's a big fan of hers. Akine turns her face to the side. She hides her emotional expression from Taiyou, thinking about how everything he said made her really happy. Meanwhile, the married man panics in the background, thinking he has offended her. The writer reflects, cigarette in hand, on creating a well-balanced story. Akine then says that maybe she will end up creating a masterpiece because of Taiyou. The poor man looks at her in admiration. He finally comments that she hasn't lit her cigarette, and the brunette reveals that it's actually candy. It's the morning of another workday at the company. Taiyou's concentration is broken. It's none other than Akine asking for his opinion on the new game's story. The married man, so innocent, says he can do whatever she wants, and Akine thanks him. While she explains her difficulty, Fuki passes by in the background and observes the scene. She doesn't like the way they're talking. That night, the couple returns to their apartment. Taiyou is focused on his computer and doesn't even notice he's being watched. His wife asks for a moment, and he asks what's wrong. He is surprised to see a teary-eyed Fuki, clearly unhappy with how much attention he has been giving Akine. The dark-haired man can't believe it, and his wife says she's been seeing him talk to the writer all the time at the office. She also says she saw them walking to work together. Taiyou explains that he's just a big fan of Akine and was helping her with ideas. He also says that sometimes they just happen to run into each other on the way to work. The blonde, even more emotional, says that it's unfair. She also wants to talk to the dark-haired man at work, even though she knows she can't. Taiyou then turns off the computer. The man uses all of his charm to calm his wife. He wipes away her tears and tells her that he will make the most of the time they spend at home together. Fuki's mood instantly improves. She hugs him, saying that she loves her husband. The man, still a little tense, realizes that he will need to keep more distance from Akine if he wants his wife to feel at ease. The next day, Taiyou stretches in his chair and gets ready for lunchtime. Akine appears and invites him to have lunch with her, but he makes up an excuse about bringing food from home and she accepts it. Later, she tries to invite him to check out a place she mentioned before. Taiyou panics and rushes past her in the hallway as if he didn't see her. Unhappy with the situation, Akine decides to corner him. The poor married man enters the elevator without a care in the world. The writer follows right behind him, very irritated. She rises on her tiptoes, slams her hand against the wall. She traps him and asks if she did something wrong and why Taiyou is avoiding her. In a moment of nervousness due to Akine's proximity, the married man nearly dies. Akine repeats the question. He finally explains that his wife is jealous. Akine is shocked, but soon she bursts into laughter and asks if that's really the reason. The poor man is still questioned if his wife is actually jealous of her. Taiyou apologizes and says he didn't know how to explain it to her. Akine asks if she can request a favor, and the married man says he will do whatever is within his power to fulfill it. With terrible intentions, the writer moves closer and asks him to come to her house that night. It's the end of the workday and Fuki is finishing some designs on her tablet. She sees that her husband is leaving. The wife decides that it's time for her to leave too, but a comic catches her attention. Before stepping out of the room, the blonde sees Akine with Taiyou, telling him that they should get going. The brunette asks him what he wants for dinner. Akine suggests they stop by the supermarket, and Fuki immediately realizes that her husband is going to the writer's house. The blonde realizes that she knew nothing about these nighttime plans, and in a complete panic, she wonders if Taiyou is cheating on her. Later that night, at her apartment, Akine serves a beautiful dinner. Excited, the man says that everything looks delicious. The writer asks him why he's blushing. Then Akine's phone starts ringing. She steps away to answer it, leaving Taiyou alone. To his shock, he hears suspicious noises. That's when he finds his wife stuck to the apartment window, looking like a complete lunatic. The poor man screams so loudly he might wake up the whole neighborhood. The blonde jumps on top of her husband, who has no idea what she's doing there. But they can't talk properly because Akine is already back. The brunette apologizes for leaving, explaining that she got a work call. But when the writer looks around, she can't find Taiyou anywhere. That's because Fuki pulled him into a closet. When he asks why they're hiding, the blonde just squeezes him tighter. Fuki realizes that if they are caught together like this, their marriage will be exposed. On top of that, she also realizes that this is technically breaking into someone's home. But if they stay in this position, she won't be able to question her husband. She reflects that she has many questions to ask, but she is interrupted by her husband, who is unknowingly squeezing her stress toys, making her turn red. The blonde even gets a little excited and says she's happy that he wants to get intimate with her, without realizing that the poor man is being smothered. Just as his wife explains that this is not a good place for that, Akine opens the closet door and finds the couple tangled up in the clothes. The two women stare at each other for a moment, and Fuki is speechless. Out of nowhere, Akine starts slapping the table. The brunette bursts into laughter while Fuki is left without words, and the surviving Taiyou breathes in relief in the background, finally free. When the writer calms down a bit, Fuki asks if the joke is over. She also says that it's fine and that next time she doesn't want to hide. But the blonde makes it very clear that the man is hers and that Akine needs to find another guy. The brunette keeps laughing like a lunatic, and Taiyou tries to get his wife's attention. He tells her that the writer already knows they're married. Akine laughs even more and says she doesn't need to find another man. She shows her wedding ring and assures them that her current husband is great. Fuki is in disbelief, saying she had no idea about this information. The blonde asks when that happened, and the writer responds that Fuki also never told her anything. As the dust settles, Fuki admits that she thought she was being cheated on, and Taiyou asks if she didn't see Akine's message about a couple's dinner with her and her husband. Fuki says she didn't receive any message, and with a straight face, Akine says she knew the blonde would show up even without an invitation. The two start arguing, with Fuki furious at Akine, while the brunette says she cooked a delicious dinner for everyone. The blonde says she is being forced to forgive her. Fuki notices that the house is quite fancy, and the writer reveals that she is married to a doctor. The blonde demands to hear the full story. At that exact moment, her husband arrives, and Akine says she'll leave the rest to their imagination. It's Valentine's Day, which means gifts of chocolates. Fuki is handing out chocolates to her female colleagues. The women are impressed by how fancy and high quality the chocolate is. Tanaka shamelessly asks for his present, and the blonde hands him a tiny, unimpressive piece of chocolate. Then she turns around and, without giving him any attention, says she's taking the rest of the day off. Fuki visits Akine's house again. Taiyou's wife brings a load of chocolate. The blonde thanks the writer for lending her kitchen and asks how work is going. Luckily, the brunette is working from home and has already finished her tasks for the day. They decide to make Valentine's Day sweets together since Fuki isn't very good at it. The blonde looks up recipes online and asks Akine if her husband likes sweets. A bit shy, the brunette says yes, and that her partner eats a lot of chocolate. Fuki finds it funny, but when Akine asks what's so funny, she says it's nothing. They decide to bake a chocolate cake. Taiyou's wife reads the ingredients while the writer measures the amounts. The problem is that Fuki really isn't good at household tasks and forgets a lot of things. In the middle of the mess, as she moves around, she bumps into Akine. Their large fronts collide, causing a loud impact. Fuki starts laughing, and when questioned, she says the accident was just funny. The blonde then melts the chocolate. To make sure it's okay, she tastes it. In a very unfortunate accident, some of it falls into her cleavage. The woman glances at the mess made by all the activity on her two giant confection bags. Akine asks what she's doing, and the blonde offers her some chocolate. The brunette is surprised but accepts the spoonful. Once the sweets are done, they leave the chocolates to cool in the fridge. Akine offers Fuki a snack, and the blonde says she already bought plenty of chocolates. Back home, it's already dark. The blonde boredly checks the time on her phone. It's 8 o'clock at night, and she realizes that her husband is late. Fuki stands up as soon as Taiyou announces that he's home. His wife eagerly welcomes him, excitedly saying that she made chocolates for him. But at that moment, she realizes she left the sweets at Akine's house. Shocked and miserable, she drops to the floor, feeling like an idiot. but to calm her down, her husband says it's no problem. Fuki notices something. Worried, she asks if something is wrong. Taiyou explains that he had a tough day at work and that the higher-ups were furious. His wife says that sounds exhausting and comes up with an idea to comfort him. She starts rummaging in the kitchen and prepares something. The blonde apologizes for the wait but brings him a gift. Taiyou looks at his cup in disbelief and asks if it's hot chocolate. His wife says it's to make up for the chocolate she forgot in Akine's fridge. And she adds that if Taiyou drinks something warm, his heart will warm up too. The dark-haired man takes a sip. Smiling, he says she was right, and the two end Valentine's Day wrapped in each other's arms on the couch at home. Fuki is alone at home, lying in bed on her phone. The woman makes an online purchase and buys a love potion. She smirks, thinking about what she's going to do with it and how it will affect her husband. The blonde imagines Taiyou heating up, taking off his clothes. In her fantasy, he leans over her. Fuki envisions a husband who says he won't let her sleep that night. With this potion, the wife hopes to see a wilder Taiyou in their nighttime fun. Later, the blonde prepares coffee for her husband and happily announces that she was sent home early, meaning they will have the whole night alone together. His wife drops a few drops of the love potion she bought online into his drink. Taiyou is surprised at how quickly she prepared the coffee. He thanks her with the most innocent expression in the world. The blonde watches expectantly as her husband drinks her secret mixture. Some time passes. Taiyou starts to feel the effects of the drink. He asks if his wife is feeling hot too, and Fuki silently celebrates that the potion is working. Acting smart, the blonde says that maybe the problem is the heater in the living room and that the bedroom must be cooler. Her husband agrees without realizing he's being manipulated and finds himself lying in their bed. He can't believe what he sees when his wife enters the room wearing a very provocative outfit and a soft, sultry expression. Fuki sits beside him and says she's feeling hot too. When she asks how she looks, her husband nervously replies that she looks very beautiful. She seductively comments on how honest he is. Lying side by side in bed, Taiyou starts dozing off. Then he asks his wife if he can be a little selfish. Fuki is already nearly ripping her clothes off in excitement when he says that even though it's still a bit early, he wanted to ask her something. The blonde immediately agrees without even knowing what it is. She uses her softest gaze and tells him that he can do whatever he wants. Her husband hugs her and thanks her. Killing his wife with frustration, he asks if they can just go to sleep. He says he's exhausted and his wife cries internally. The next day, Fuki leaves a positive review on the website where she bought the love potion. She writes that she doesn't know if the potion works as an aphrodisiac, but since the guy ended up sleeping, the drink probably helped him in some way. Fuki is not happy with what she sees. The blonde is weighing herself and the number on the scale is higher than she expected. Looking in the mirror, she also notices that her face looks swollen. She reflects that she spends too much time sitting and that her posture is bad. For that reason, Fuki decides that it's time for a lifestyle change, which scares Taiyou. The next morning starts early. The blonde wakes up before her husband. Checking her phone, she sees that it's 5:30 am. When she gets out of bed, her husband is still asleep. Dragging a small table, the woman makes space in the living room. Fuki connects her phone to the TV and selects a weight loss workout video. Dressed in workout clothes, she gets motivated and spends some time exercising. She bends and squats, striking several poses that highlight her assets. The yoga positions showcase Fuki's beauty and flexibility. The blonde struggles when she has to do a bridge pose. Fully stretched out, she collapses onto the mat, sweaty and exhausted, deciding that she can't handle these poses. She concludes that maybe it's better to go for a run instead. Out on the city streets, Fuki catches the attention of many men who admire her. With each step, her Pilates balls bounce along with her. Unaware of the gazes around her, Fuki enjoys her run. She thinks that at this rate, she'll easily lose 2 kilos and doesn't even notice a smiling guy thinking about how nice it is to see something so amazing in the morning. Back at the couple's apartment, Taiyou is cooking something in a frying pan. At peace, he prepares breakfast. Fuki announces that she's back. The blonde confirms when her husband asks that she went out for a run and says that she's exhausted. She says she'll have a breakfast salad, but the dark-haired man tells her that since it's the weekend, he made something special. His wife looks a bit nervous as Taiyou sets the plate on the table. Her husband serves a plate of pancakes with melted butter. Already drooling with desire, Fuki thinks about how delicious the food looks. But she also reflects that if she eats the pancakes, all the effort she put into exercising will be wasted. She's already prepared to reject the food. But then Taiyou hits her with an adorable smile and says he saw how hard she had been working these past few days, so he made something she would enjoy. Fuki throws her arms around her husband and tells him she loves him in the end, accepting the pancakes. The wife traded a little weight gain for a lot of happiness. At the entrance of a store, a commotion is happening. Some younger guys won't stop bothering Akine, calling her a hot auntie and asking what she's doing alone during break time. The brunette sighs because she just wants to smoke in peace. She responds that that's exactly what she's doing. The woman asks them to leave her alone, but one of the guys comments that he likes how distant she is and asks if she wants to hang out with him later. At that very moment, a man exits the store and snatches Akine's cigarette. The smiling man declares himself to be her husband. Intimidated, the guys say they didn't know she was married and finally take off. Akine complains that her husband was late, and he apologizes, explaining that the store had so many new sweets that he took a while to choose. He shows that he brought some for her, and the brunette introduces her husband as Masato Tsukushi, calling him a goofball. Masato tells her to head home with him and offers his hand to help her up. Akine stares at his hand for a few seconds and rejects the offer. She tells him to stop doing stupid things and rushes him along, but her husband isn't giving up and asks her again to hold his hand. Akine rejects him again. Not discouraged, Masato, full of love, says that just being by her side is enough. His wife comments that he has always been affectionate like this. Akine says that she is different from him. She confesses that she loves him so much that she can't be honest with her feelings. The woman thinks about how amazing it was when he helped her with those guys. How she wanted to hold his hand, but her hands were sweaty. How he's a doctor, but he also loves sweets, and how that makes him adorable. Akine then explains that the couple signed the paperwork before maturing their relationship. When Masato proposed to her on the third day of dating, she accepted, thinking there was no way this could go wrong. While walking home accompanied by her husband, Akine realizes that the next day they will complete 3 months of marriage and have the day off. She wants to take the opportunity to make out later. Later, her husband clears his plate at dinner. He says the food is delicious as always. The young man also thanks the brunette for always choosing the right food to cook. Trying not to give herself away, Akine says that a doctor with bad health would be a terrible thing. But the writer thinks about how he always says these things. Akine gets up. She casually says she's going to take a shower. The brunette remembers that he always teases her at these moments and that Masato will definitely take the bait this time. Her husband always invites her to shower with him, but every time she rejects him, saying she only bathes in the morning. Akine knows this will create a mood between them and imagines a very steamy scene in the shower. Back to reality, her husband gets up and asks if she's going to shower today. Masato says she shouldn't do it right after eating, fearing she might get indigestion or feel a sharp pain in her heart. Akine tells him to stop acting like a doctor. In the end, to the writer's frustration, she ended up showering alone. A very long shower. She thinks about Fuki and Taiyou and their happy marriage and decides to ask the blonde for help. The brunette sends a message to her friend asking how to be more like them. Fuki is surprised but suggests she wear more provocative clothes for her husband. Akine reads the message and realizes she hadn't even considered that possibility. The brunette analyzes the situation. She surprises her husband, who is using his computer at the table. And appearing only in a blouse, she uncomfortably wonders if she was too aggressive. Masato gets a nosebleed, and his wife comments on how obvious he makes it that he liked the outfit. Akine then realizes she didn't ask Fuki what to do next, but her husband calls her. He takes the initiative and asks if she was trying to seduce him. Dying of embarrassment and caught red-handed, she says she would never do such a thing and that she was just feeling hot. Shikun says she's not crazy enough to practice some horizontal activities. The brunette realizes she said too much, and Masato is already apologizing, telling her to go cool off. On impulse, Akine grabs him by the shirt. The brunette asks him to wait a moment. She apologizes and says sadly that she can't be honest. Masato pauses. Surprisingly, her husband whispers that this is what he likes about her. The young man then suggests they try being honest in bed, and Akine is surprised but accepts. The next day, Fuki calls her friend to ask what happened, but the brunette says she couldn't sleep and will talk to her later. Amid the city streets, a hand holds a flower hairpin. A student comments that it wouldn't look good on the girl in front of him and she gets nervous, asking for the hairpin back. He keeps teasing her and asks why she's trying to look pretty. He even says that a girl with hair as messy as hers will never be cute. Before the girl starts crying, 2 adult women intervene in the discussion. Fuki says he didn't have to go that far, and Akine tells him to be careful because discrimination can get someone canceled these days. The blonde says that's not the point. Scared, the boy asks who they are, and the writer says they were just passing by and saw the scene. Back to scolding, Fuki says that if a girl tries to dress up, she only gets prettier, and the boy says that old ladies like them just try to look young. Fuki imagines strangling the boy in her thoughts, but she only says in an authoritative tone for him to come back to that same place at the same time the next day. Challenged, Taiyou's wife says she's going to make the teenager stunning. Incredulous and somewhat intimidated, the student ends up accepting the help. The 3 walk together through the city. Fuki suggests they buy new clothes, and Akine says they'll need skincare products. The teenager thinks about how beautiful women are. While the adults discuss where to go first, the student asks for their attention. She thanks them for the help, but she says she has always been this way. The girl says she doesn't think it will work and that trying will be a waste of time. But Fuki calls out to the student. She asks Yuzuki if she can't be beautiful on the inside too. With a more mysterious air, Akine tells the girl not to worry. The brunette tells the girl to leave it to them. Yuzuki thanks them for the help, and Fuki says they will make the boy pay for what he did. The teenager looks at the 2 women, and she wonders if she can really be like them. Fuki first takes the trio to a hair salon. They are greeted by a very beautiful woman with long black hair. The blonde apologizes to the woman for calling at the last minute, but she says it was no problem. In her corner, Yuzuki is in awe of how beautiful the hairdresser is. She also confesses that it is her first time in a beauty salon. The girl explains that because she is poor, her mother has always cut her hair, but since her mother has been busy, she hasn't had a haircut in a while. The hairdresser is understanding and asks if it's okay for her to cut the teenager's hair or if Yuzuki is scared. She confirms once again, and the student quickly says it's no problem. She even adds that if such a beautiful woman is cutting her hair, she will be more than happy. The hairdresser says that Yuzuki is a good girl and that she will make her look beautiful. Some time passes, and the hairdresser shows the teenager the result in the mirror. The girl is enchanted. Her hair is much shorter now, and her very beautiful eyes are visible. Yuzuki barely recognizes herself in the reflection, and Fuyuki says she put a little makeup on her, but the teenager is naturally beautiful. Akine then returns the flower hairpin to the girl. The girl looks at the object and remembers the night before. She had suffered another day of bullying at school, but she said she knew that she really didn't look good with that hairstyle. At that moment, her mother welcomed her home very excitedly. She gave her the hairpin and said she had found it on the way home. The woman said her daughter would look good with it. Yuzuki didn't put much faith in it, but her mother believed in her beauty. Back in the present, the teenager puts the hairpin in her hair. Fuyuki asks if she is ready for the next day. The student smiles more confidently and says yes. Before saying goodbye, the blonde teaches the girl one more thing. The next day, at the same time and place, the teenagers meet. The boy who humiliated Yuzuki is embarrassed when he sees how beautiful she is. He wonders if she kept herself looking bad to avoid attracting attention from other men, but then he realizes that doesn't make sense. Pretending to be uninterested, the boy says that the hairpin doesn't even suit her and adds that even if he were her boyfriend, he would still think that. Yuzuki then interrupts him and stares at him with the same look of disdain as Fuyuki. The girl asks why she would even be interested in him. In disbelief, the student is suffering from humiliation, and as she continues on her way, Yuzuki wonders if she used Fuyuki's technique correctly. Fuyuki shows Taiyou a photo of her with Akine and Yuzuki and tells him how they got closer to the teenager. Her husband says it seems like it was fun. He remembers his high school days. The brunette thinks about the two of them in uniforms and recalls that it was during that time that they met. A flashback of a day at school happens. In a random classroom, some students were chatting. On a cell phone, someone was playing a cat game. Two girls were gossiping about the boy on his phone, commenting that he was always alone playing games. They talked about how weird he was because of that. That boy was Taiyou and got irritated because they didn't even remember his name. The boy was then surprised when manicured nails were placed on his desk. Right after the nails came Fuyuki's set of colorful spheres as she seemed very interested in what he was playing on his phone. She complimented Taiyou's character. The boy was startled by the blonde and she continued talking excitedly about how she'd also liked that game, even though she didn't have much luck with gacha. He felt a bit embarrassed and said that she scared him, but the blonde didn't care much and asked him to show her the other games he liked. Awkwardly, Taiyou agreed. A little later, a classmate asked Fuyuki to help her fix her makeup. With great cuteness, the blonde said goodbye to her new friend and told him she would see him later. Taiyou watched incredulously as Fuyuki walked away. He reflected on how she was the most popular girl in school, and that since he probably wouldn't have another opportunity to talk to someone like her. Later, a meeting took place in a bookstore. Fuyuki was trying to reach a book on the top shelf. The fact that her balloons were getting in the way didn't help much. Her future husband was very surprised to find her in the store. He wanted to help her reach the book, but the young man had always been shorter than her. The girl was surprised to see him in the bookstore as well. Instead of brute force, he used his brain and grabbed a small step ladder so the girl could climb up. The blonde was very excited about the help and asked him what book he was there to buy. Taiyou, blushing, replied that he was looking for a book on game programming. He showed the book to Fuyuki, already deeply regretting it, thinking the girl was going to make fun of him. To his surprise, the blonde asked if he wanted to join her in making a video game. Before the brunette could figure out how to react, his future wife offered to do the drawings. He then asked her if she knew how to draw, and the girl confirmed. Fuyuki showed him a sketch on her phone. Taiyou got very excited and praised the artwork, saying it was great and that he wished he could draw like that. The blonde absorbed the compliment in silence. She said her mother worked as an illustrator, and since she admired her, she also drew from time to time. Her future husband thought that was really cool. After all that, they got closer, deciding to make a simulation game so they could use the blonde's drawings. The boy studied programming and worked on the game's engineering. Meanwhile, the girl created several designs. Even at school, they talked, and their classmates were jealous of the attention he was getting from the most popular girl in school. One day, Fuyuki went to visit Taiyou at his house. Showing zero experience with women, the boy nearly had a stroke because his classmate was in his room. She complimented how organized the place was. The student said it was because he didn't have many things, and his future wife said that was a positive trait. Taiyou opened his laptop so they could work together on the game they were developing. Fuyuki quickly realized that the boy was stuck writing the story. With his heart racing, he said he didn't know how to write the scene right after a character confesses their love for another, specifically, the scene where they kiss. Taiyou blushed and confessed that since he had never kissed anyone, he didn't know how to describe the act. The blonde wanted to suggest something. The boy was already bracing himself for whatever was coming, and with a soft gaze, Fuyuki asked the boy if he wanted to try kissing her. Still in high school flashback, the couple was sitting side by side when Fuyuki asked the brunette if he wanted to try kissing her. Disoriented, the boy stared at her, unable to respond. The blonde continued looking at him with an expectant expression. Taiyou's heart was pounding. The poor guy was lost in the girl's lips. He asked why they should kiss if they weren't dating, and Fuki insisted that it was for the video game, that it would be better if he had prior experience. The scared boy was already about to agree. That was when Taiyou's mother opened the door without knocking and offered them some sweets. A horrible atmosphere settled in the room. In the silence, Taiyou's mother commented on how uncomfortable the situation was, and the boy scolded her. Laughing, his mother told her son not to overreact, even if it was his first girlfriend. Taiyou insisted that Fuki was nothing to him. The blonde was enjoying herself with her future mother-in-law. The woman was kicked out of the room by her son, but not before saying she would be waiting for Fuki to become her daughter-in-law. The student apologized, saying that his mother had said inappropriate things to the blonde, but Fuki didn't mind and said she didn't know he was like that with his family. And she added that she found it charming. Taiyou's heart did another somersault. Embarrassed, his classmates said that she should be the one apologizing for going too far. The teenager then realized that this meant it had been just a joke. The blonde said she would think of a way to make it up to him, and he thanked her. But Taiyou couldn't hide his sadness about the situation. He then reflected that if Fuki was writing the kiss scene, it meant she had experience in that area. Another day at their school was unfolding. Clutching his laptop, Taiyou ran through the school looking for Fuki. The game was finally finished, and he needed to tell the blonde. When he found her in the hallway of the building, the boy immediately called for her attention. Before he could talk about the game, Taiyou was interrupted. Two other students, who had the look of popular teenagers, approached Fuki, and one of them asked if she wasn't spending too much time with a loser. The boy even said that she should spend more time with the popular crowd and placed his hand on the blonde's shoulder. The girl asked him not to touch her. Taiyou thought he wasn't very good at dealing with the popular kids at school, but even so, he asked the guy to respect what Fuki had just said. The popular kid shoved him hard and asked what an otaku had to do with anything. Because of the push, a laptop fell to the floor. Fuki and the other popular boy were worried about the laptop, but the one who pushed Taiyou just laughed at the situation. The boy said it was Taiyou's fault for bringing a laptop to school, while the brunette picked up his device from the ground. When Fuki asked if it was okay, the boy said he thought so and that he had a backup. Finally, his classmate asked what he had wanted to tell her. One of the popular boys commented that it was better to leave the nerd alone, and he and the other guy started planning to go to karaoke after school. Hearing the plans, half the school decided to go along. Resigned, Taiyou told Fuki to go to karaoke and have fun. Without any drama, the blonde simply said she wouldn't be going. They asked her why, and Fuki explained that she and Taiyou were making a game together. The student explained that she was in charge of the art. Laughing, some of the popular students said that didn't make any sense. Taiyou then raised his voice to defend his beloved and say that wasn't true. He said that Fuki made very beautiful and cute drawings. A smug guy came up behind him, said he was getting carried away, and even asked the brunette if he liked the blonde that much. Gathering his courage, Taiyou said that actually he did like Fuki. The entire school was in shock at the boy's boldness. He then realized the huge mistake he had just made. The student had said those words so naturally and immediately began to wonder if their relationship would end right there. The smug boy told Fuki to just dump the brunette already. But surprising everyone, the blonde was actually moved by the confession. Fuki needed a moment to process Taiyou's confession. Meanwhile, the entire school was in shock at the blonde's reaction. She tried to sound casual and said that it was just the normal reaction of someone who had received a love confession. The popular boys then remembered how she had reacted in all other cases. Taiyou then tried to get her attention again, but the blonde ran away, embarrassed. The girl fled through the hallways to the open area of the school. The boy finally caught up with her and grabbed her by the wrist. The blonde almost screamed in surprise. Out of breath, the boy asked her to wait a moment. Fuki came back to her senses and, worried, asked if the student was okay. He commented that the girl was really fast. The blonde apologized for running away and explained that she couldn't handle the situation, but Taiyou said it was actually his fault, and that it must be annoying to have someone like him liking you, especially when that person confesses in front of everyone. Before the boy could say anything else depressing, Fuki interrupted him and asked why he had such low self-esteem. She reminded him that the first time they spoke was when he was playing a game. The blonde then revealed that her mother had worked on that game, and Fuki said that the game wasn't even that popular, but seeing him enjoy playing it so much had made her really happy. She also talked about how everyone used to make fun of her drawings, but when Taiyou saw them, he praised her sketches. Finally, the blonde said that she had a lot of fun developing the video game with him. And in the end, Fuki finally gathered the courage to confess to Taiyou, saying that she loved him. Not believing his luck, the boy couldn't say anything besides screaming. Trembling, he asked if he had heard correctly, and the blonde confirmed it. When they started talking again, the two were debating whether it was just friendly love. But Fuki interrupted the conversation with a proposal and asked if her future husband would like to kiss her. To the brunette's shock, she said that this time it was for real. The girl confessed that the last time she had asked, she had actually wanted to make out. Taiyou's heart raced and he made a decision. The boy kissed the blonde's cheek, and he was already leaving the scene. But his classmate held his hand before he could walk away. With great shyness, Fuki told him that if it wasn't on the lips, it wouldn't count. The distance between them shrank just as the school bell rang, and Taiyou commented that it was time to go back to class. Fuki said they were skipping together. The two finally kissed. They stayed close together in the open area of the school. They breathed in each other's air, and after overcoming their shyness, they smiled at each other, happy to be together. Back in the present, Fuki rests her phone. She smiles while clinging to her husband's arm, and he asks what's up. The blonde comments that she was thinking about their teenage years, and her husband says he was too. She says the brunette hasn't changed a bit. Taiyou tries to argue that he's grown a little. With a deeply affectionate look, Fuki tells him that they will be together forever. Taiyou says that of course that will happen, and in this romantic moment, they hug each other happily. Somewhere not too far from the couple's apartment, someone searches how to make someone get divorced. A woman with long dark hair is using a computer in a dimly lit room. It's a new day at the couple's residence. Fuki checks the thermometer and the temperature is high. She declares that Taiyou has a fever, and her husband, lying in bed, apologizes as if it were his fault for being sick. He still wants to go to work, but Fuki calls him a corporate slave, and the young man gives in, saying he'll stay home. Taiyou promises his wife that he'll get better if he rests and wants her to hurry to work before she's late. His wife is already taking off her mask to kiss him, maybe even catch his cold. But he stops her and says he won't let her do that under any circumstances. Her husband's confident and uncharacteristic attitude makes Fuki's heart race. Even knowing he's feverish, the woman wonders if he has always been this charming. Not willing to give up, the blonde climbs onto the bed and asks for at least one little thing. She hugs her husband and tries to give him some energy through her giant medicinal pillows. Taiyou blushes and thanks her for the help. Fuki finds her husband adorable. They reflect that it's best to take things slow so they can flirt more later. Fuki leaves for work and tells him to let her know if anything happens. Later, Taiyou checks his phone. With great effort, the brunette gets up and leaves the bed to take his medication. He goes to the kitchen to take his medicine and realizes he's worse off than he thought. Leaning on the counter, he sends a message to Fuki, asking her to bring some things when she comes home. However, his health is so fragile that he drops his phone and collapses on the kitchen floor. Some time passes and someone unlocks the apartment door. A woman wearing dark stockings and carrying a bag enters the residence. With her long black hair, she appears to be the same one who wanted to cause a divorce. Shivering on the floor, Taiyou wakes up burning with fever. Hearing someone calling his name, he asks if it's his wife. The unknown woman says she's lucky she kept his spare key and asks if he has a fever. The stranger reflects that the young man has always had fragile health and says she can't believe Fuki left him alone at home in this state. She says he shouldn't have married an extroverted wife, and that instead he should have chosen someone like her, a more melancholic woman. The young man recognizes the invader's voice and asks what she is doing there. He calls her Satsuki, and the brunette says it's been a while since they last saw each other. Taiyou has a memory from when he was a child. He is crying and his older sister is comforting him. His younger self seems very attached to his sister. Back in the present, Taiyou is quite sick. Satsuki comments that he looks like he's really suffering. She gets on top of the poor guy and with a crazed look comments that the older sister, covers the brunette's face with her large emotional support assets. Taiyou pushes her away and asks what she is doing. The brother asks where he is, and the brunette says this is the room where he used to live. That's when he remembers when he was going to marry Fuki. He thinks about how Satsuki wouldn't stop complaining about the wedding because she loved him too much as a brother. The crying lasted for an entire month. As a way to appease her, Taiyou gave her his room since he wouldn't be using it anymore. The brunette was incredibly moved, and because the room became hers, Satsuki said she was going to sniff her little brother every day. Back in the present, the sister shows the brunette that he sent a message asking her for help. She brought him to their parents' house and now wants to take care of him along with their mother. He realizes he got confused and sent the message to the wrong person. Taiyou then asks where his phone is and Satsuki wavers. Smiling, she says she forgot to bring the device. His sister then stands up and informs him that she will ask their mother to notify Fuki. She finally declares that she already spoke with his workplace to get him a few days off. Satsuki tells her brother to relax and rest, and Taiyou thinks that at least he won't have to worry about infecting his wife. Before resting, the young man says he needs to go to the bathroom. Smiling, his sister insists on accompanying him, walking hand in hand with him. Uncomfortable, Taiyou asks why. He says he can go alone and doesn't need to hold hands with Satsuki, but the brunette says it would be bad if he collapsed again. The brother is too exhausted to argue. He sits on the toilet. Since his sister doesn't take the hint, he kicks her out of the bathroom and slams the door, and the girl laments being expelled. But she says that just hearing him in the bathroom is already great, and Taiyou asks what she means. Outside, Satsuki is already acting. She takes her brother's phone out of her pocket, the one she claimed he had left at the couple's apartment, along with her own device. The brunette manipulates the phones and manages to do what she wants because they are the same model. Taiyou leaves the bathroom and apologizes for taking so long, asking what she was doing. She replies that she's always worried about her brother and always doing something for him, finally asking him to take some time to rest. Meanwhile, something happens at the couple's workplace. Someone is typing rapidly. Fuki is extremely focused on her computer. Tanaka notices her determination and looks at her in admiration. She looks very serious, but beneath her mask, she is nearly crying with worry about her husband. The blonde thinks about his fragile health and his risk of collapsing, so she wants to go home as soon as possible. At that moment, messages arrive. The wife sees that they came from her husband's phone, but their content leaves her shocked. They say that the marriage isn't going well and that Taiyou is already at his limit. In the last message, he asks for a divorce. Taiyou lies feverish in bed. Meanwhile, Satsuki uses his phone satisfied. She reads the messages she sent to Fuki while pretending to be her brother, attempting to end the blonde's relationship with him. Finally putting down the device, Satsuki thinks that if everything goes well, Fuki will leave. In a jealous fantasy, she imagines stealing Taiyou from his wife. The brunette then plans to buy a house where they will be happy forever. Satsuki opens her laptop, now more determined. She calculates her moves and analyzes graphs. The older sister is an investor and enters serious mode as soon as she begins working toward earning the 100 million yen she needs. Sometime later, the front door opens. Satsuki goes to see who it is. It's the sibling's mother, who has just arrived home. The daughter greets her and she asks how her son is doing. Satsuki says he still has a fever. Worried, the matriarch asks if she and her husband should cancel the trip they planned for the next day. The investor assures her that the parents don't spend much time together, so they should go on their trip, assuring their mother that everything will be fine because the brunette will be there. She promises to take care of her brother. The mother then says she will leave everything in her daughter's hands. Satsuki informs her that she will notify her sister-in-law. The brunette returns to her brother's room on the second floor. She enters in silence, and as she watches him, she thinks about how they will spend a few days together. The brunette removes her glasses. Overflowing with emotions, she wonders what they should do. Taiyou is still asleep, and Satsuki gently strokes his face, now calmer. She concludes that her brother needs to get better first. Her mental monologue is then interrupted by a conversation downstairs. In a panic, Satsuki realizes something and hopes she's wrong. The woman throws the bedroom door open. Her mother is talking to someone and says that Taiyou's fever isn't going down. The person at the entrance of the house comments that it's just like when he was younger. Satsuki rushes down the stairs as soon as she recognizes the voice. From the doorway of the residence, a blonde is having a cheerful conversation with her mother-in-law. Fuki waves with a bright smile at her sister-in-law. The one is very polite and starts chatting. Taiyou's sister immediately hides behind their mother. Laughing even more, the blonde comments on how shy and cute Satsuki is. She has no idea how much her sister-in-law hates her and feels like she's invading her space. The investor wonders why her sister-in-law is here, and the sibling's mother invites her daughter-in-law inside. The matriarch asks if she'll be free tomorrow since she'll be away for a few days, and the blonde says she has weekends off. To Satsuki's despair, relieved, the mother then says that Fuki can stay at the house. And to top it off, she asks Fuki to take care of her son alongside Satsuki. It's morning the next day at Taiyou's family home. The mother leaves for her trip with her husband and bids farewell to the family. While Fuki says goodbye to her in-laws with a smile, her sister-in-law is in complete distress. Satsuki realizes the mess she's gotten herself into. Her sister-in-law remains cheerful and turns to her with enthusiasm. She faces the older sister and says she'll take charge of taking care of her husband. The brunette tries to offer help but doesn't know how. The duo heads up to the second floor of the house and reflecting on the situation, Satsuki realizes she hasn't talked to anyone outside her family in a long time. From the top of the stairs, Fuki turns around, and she smiles. The expression leaves Satsuki confused and nervous. Taiyou's wife looks at her sister-in-law for a few moments. Lost in her own thoughts, the blonde finds the brunette adorable. She thinks about how Satsuki doesn't seem used to talking to others, and adding that to her appearance, she realizes how much the eldest sibling resembles her brother. Entering the bedroom, Fuki tries to think of ways to make her sister-in-law like her more. Then she sees that her husband is awake in bed. The woman rushes to hug him and asks how he's feeling. With her built-in commission thermometers, she analyzes that Taiyou's fever has gone down. Nearly suffocating, he tells his wife not to do that. Watching the whole scene from the doorway, Satsuki feels disgusted and can't believe they're putting on such a show right in front of her. She then opens her blouse and asks her brother if he really likes grabbing pillows that much. Taiyou suffers a sudden attack of commission and finds himself crushed in the collision. In desperation, he hears his sister say that he can use her cushions as pillows whenever he wants. The poor, sick brunette can't breathe in the middle of the sandwich. He nearly passes out from lack of air before the girls finally let him go. A little later, they head down to the kitchen. The women start preparing a meal, and Fuki asks her sister-in-law if she knows how to make porridge. The brunette looks downcast. Embarrassed, she confesses that she doesn't know how to cook. Trying to encourage her, the blonde says it's actually pretty easy. But at that moment, the older sister is feeling inferior for not knowing how to cook, realizing that in trying to make the couple divorce, she only made her brother appreciate his wife even more. Not letting it get to her, the wife says she'll teach her how to cook. Fuki gives her some tips. Satsuki feels irritated that her sister-in-law is so nice. The brunette immediately scolds herself for falling for Fuki's charm and tries to remind herself that this woman stole Taiyou from her. At that moment, Fuki asks if it was her who sent the message pretending to be her brother. Satsuki panics and realizes she's been found out. She tries to play dumb, asking what the blonde is talking about. The investor thinks that if her sister-in-law knew the whole time, then she was just pretending to be nice. She imagines herself as the victim, believing that Fuyuki's sweet words were nothing more than pity. The brunette promises to show who's really superior. Meanwhile, Fuyuki thinks about how adorable her sister-in-law is and how much she must love her brother to do what she assumes was just a silly prank. And it's the 10th time someone has tried to cause a divorce through fake messages. Reflecting on the past, Satsuki recalls that instead of losing weight, she gained it in early adolescence. She wonders what that led to in her life. The brunette was bullied at school. The other girls made fun of her behind her back. School days were tough. One time, while walking down the hallway, Satsuki was stopped by some classmates. A trio of girls with cruel smiles asked her to follow them. They led the girl to the girls' restroom. Once inside, they trapped her and held the door shut. Satsuki pleaded with them to let her out of the stall. But the girls, showing no mercy, started laughing and saying that this was the best place for a pig like her. The leader of the bullies was messing with her phone while making these taunts. At that moment, she received a message from her boyfriend and started bragging about how much the guy liked her and showered her with gifts. The other girls had the same, and Satsuki wondered how. She didn't understand how these people had so much and still wanted to torture her. The trio then prepared a bucket to dump on the brunette's head. As the liquid splashed all over her, Satsuki wondered why they were so cruel to her. When she got home, her mother was shocked. And from that moment on, the young girl rarely left the house. Satsuki's younger brother never abandoned her, always bringing her snacks. He played with her. He always tried to cheer her up. Time passed, and Taiyou continued to take care of his older sister. Now older, she spent her time in front of the computer. She accepted the sandwich Taiyou gave her and took a bite. Smiling, the brunette confirmed that it was delicious. Her brother seemed satisfied to take care of her. He commented that she had been spending more time in front of the computer. Satsuki then said that since she stayed at home, she was trying to learn about things like financial markets, marketing, and game coding. Surprised, the younger one asked about it, and the brunette said coding was actually pretty simple. Taiyou then said that he loved video games and wanted to learn about that too. Away from school and spending her time with Taiyou, Satsuki felt like she had enough to be happy. However, she snaps back to the present. As Fuyuki unpacks her bags to spend the weekend, the investor thinks about how the blonde already had everything and still stole the little that she herself had. She remembers the bullies from school and thinks that Fuyuki is just like them. Imagining steamy activities between Taiyou and his wife, Satsuki concludes that her little brother was seduced and that she needs to expose who the blonde really is. That's when Fuyuki finds what she was looking for. She shows several bags of sweets and says they're going to have a girls' night. Taiyou's wife asks what snack her sister-in-law wants. Hiding her emotions, Satsuki reveals that she has never participated in a girls' night before, and since she couldn't bring herself to say anything, the two ended up watching a bunch of movies. A new day begins at the Hara family residence. Taiyou is finally healthy again after sleeping a lot, and his sister celebrates. She then realizes she failed to separate the couple. Fuyuki suggests that her husband rest a bit more, just in case. The blonde places a hand on the brunette's shoulder and makes a suggestion. She says the two of them should go shopping. To the investor's despair, her sister-in-law says that since she mentioned having few clothes, Fuyuki can help her pick some out. Satsuki is already trying to dodge the idea when Taiyou says she should go because he wants pudding. The brunette can't believe the betrayal. The shopping mall is packed with strangers. The whole situation gives Satsuki extreme anxiety, but she can't refuse a request from her brother. Fuyuki takes her to a very fancy clothing store. They are attended to as soon as they enter, and the blonde seems completely at ease. Unlike her sister-in-law, the brunette feels like she doesn't belong in this place. Fuyuki then picks out an outfit for the investor and asks her to try it on. Even more tense, Satsuki looks at the price tags and sees how expensive they are. The brunette steps out of the fitting room, revealing her new look. She seems uncomfortable with the shorter and more transparent skirt, but her sister-in-law thinks she looks great. Taiyou's wife immediately tells the store clerk that they'll buy the outfit. Still in shock, the brunette approaches with her wallet and says she'll pay. But Fuyuki says that Satsuki's birthday is coming up and that the clothes will be a gift from her and Taiyou. Feeling extremely awkward, the older sister thanks her. She is lost in her thoughts and frustrated with the situation. The woman is so focused that she doesn't even notice an old acquaintance approaching. Looking more closely at the short-haired young woman, she remembers who she is. It's the leader of the bullies, now an adult. She asks what Satsuki is doing. The investor freezes as her former classmate bombards her with questions and tries to humiliate her, saying that she's still the same even after losing weight. When Satsuki says that she works in the financial market, the bully's tone changes. She sees an opportunity, and she asks if the brunette can lend her some money. The shameless woman starts going on about how her husband left her with a child and that she has no savings. The former classmate wants to make Satsuki feel bad for her. Taiyou's sister doesn't want to get involved with the bully. She begins to take out her wallet, thinking that if she gives the woman some money, she'll leave her alone. But someone stops her. Fuyuki reappears and tells the shameless woman to earn her own money. Satsuki's former classmate asks in disbelief who she is. Her sister-in-law continues defending her, saying that the investor worked hard to earn her money. She says that Satsuki doesn't have to give money to someone who just spent their life slacking off. Finally, the blonde says that if the woman just wants expensive clothes, she'll find a way to get them herself. The shopping trip comes to an end. The two are on their way home. Satsuki feels something stuck in her throat. She asks Fuyuki why she helped her if all the brunette ever did was chase her around. The wife is shocked, and with teary eyes, she says she thought it was all just harmless teasing. The older sister asks why her sister-in-law is crying, and she responds that she really likes Satsuki and just wanted to get along with her. And the brunette makes a decision. She tells a teary-eyed Fuyuki that she can't jump into this relationship all at once, but she gives in and says that if Taiyou comes along, they can hang out together sometimes. Overcome with emotion, Fuyuki tries to hug her sister-in-law and says she'll visit every week. Already regretting it, Taiyou's sister tells the blonde not to be so clingy. The sun shines and people enjoy the beach. A boy wearing glasses calls his friend's attention to two women. The boy comments on how beautiful they are, and it's obvious what he's looking at. Fuki and Akine strut down the beach wearing outfits that highlight all their beauty. The boy says that the blonde looks like a model and has an irresistible energy. His friend says that the brunette is more his type and that he'd love to get scolded by her. The boy in glasses points out how both of them have massive flotation devices, so it's a win either way. His companion asks if he wants to take the risk and hit on them, but they realize they've already been beaten to it by much more handsome guys. Judging by the women's faces, the boys understand that the flirting didn't go well. Defeated, the two know that if the good-looking guys failed, they shouldn't even bother trying. Then they see the husbands approaching the scene. The boys assume Taiyou and Masato are going to take their chances despite not having many physical advantages. The guy in glasses is already bracing himself for a public humiliation. But to his shock, the women actually give attention to their married men. Encouraged, the two leave thinking that appearance isn't everything after all. Several families swim in the ocean, and Fuyuki is also getting ready to enter the water. She invites Masato and Akine to swim with her, but the two prefer to stay on the sand. The blonde then calls her husband. With all of her charm, she asks if he wants to go into the water. Taiyou says that his wife's glow is blinding, and the woman assumes he's talking about the sunlight. Akine and Masato watch the other couple walking toward the ocean. The doctor then asks his wife if she made up an excuse to be alone with him. Confronted, the writer denies it. Her husband holds her face and asks if she's sure about that. Both of them have sweat dripping down their legs, and it's not just because of the heat. Unable to keep lying, Akine confesses that she really did want to stay with him on the sand. The sun shines brightly over the ocean, and Fuyuki is already swimming with Taiyou. He asks his wife if she's comfortable with the water's depth. She says yes, but she also seems to have other intentions. The blonde pulls him closer. Getting all snuggled up with the brunette, she says that at this depth, no one can see what they're doing. And underwater, it's clear that Taiyou isn't just feeling the sand beneath his feet. Meanwhile, several other couples swim around them, completely unaware of what's happening. Taiyou looks down and realizes that no one is paying attention. He's about to have a wandering hand moment, but the young man restrains himself and stepping back says they can't do this in public. Fuyuki already knew this would be her husband's reaction. The brunette tells his wife that they should do these things at home since he doesn't want to go too far at the beach. That's when he realizes that his wife reacted in an unexpected way. The blonde was completely shaken. She confesses that she was surprised by the idea, and Taiyou realizes what he accidentally implied. Fuyuki ends by saying that she'll let her husband take care of her that night, and he agrees. But they were so exhausted from the outing that they ended up falling asleep. On an ordinary afternoon, Fuyuki sips her coffee while searching for something. She's in a confectionery shop. Then, something catches her attention. She sees some Japanese sweets in very elegant packaging. Fuyuki is already buying a few things that her husband likes when the cashier calls her. Blushing heavily, he says he has been watching her since she walked in and asks if she would like to go out for dinner. She thinks for a moment, but the blonde says she'd rather have dinner with her husband and gets flustered just thinking about him. The cashier watches her leave, satisfied, and with tears in his eyes, he thanks her for the purchase. Back at the office, some people are working. Others are praising Fuyuki and her competence. Two women comment on how she seems particularly dedicated that day. And although the blonde looks so focused, in reality she is determined to engage in some special activities with her husband after dinner. She imagines herself in bed pretending to be very drunk and meaning his care. Excited by her ideas and eager for more, she keeps working. A conversation in the engineering department catches her attention, and she wonders if they are having problems. She approaches her husband and asks what's wrong. Taiyou almost slips up again, calling her by her first name, but in the end, he manages to explain that the team is having trouble with the data they need to send. His wife whispers and asks if he will still be able to go out tonight. The brunette responds with a thumbs up, confusing his team. He whispers back that he's looking forward to later, and the couple smiles at each other. Taiyou's colleagues call for his attention, and everyone goes back to work. Later that night, the office is still open. With great effort, the team finally manages to send the data that was causing problems. Taiyou gives the good news, and his subordinates celebrate. He's already thinking that there's still time to go out with his wife when someone calls him. The poor guy answers and accepts the task assigned to him. To everyone's dismay, the team has received a request to fix a bug, and it has to be done today. Everyone starts panicking, thinking they won't be able to go home. Since the task can be done by just one person, they try to decide who will stay late. With a heavy heart, Taiyou already knows who will take the hit. It's already quite late and the office remains open. In the room, only Taiyou and Fuki remain. He apologizes for taking on the task himself and explains that he was the one who could fix the problem the fastest. His wife reassures him and says she would have done the same. The blonde asks if he's done and her husband replies that he will need another hour. The young man is very upset about bailing on his wife, but she doesn't want him to keep apologizing. Fuki insists that they can reschedule their date and that the work deadline couldn't be moved the same way their date could. At that moment, Taiyou's stomach growls and he admits he hasn't eaten since breakfast. Fortunately, Fuki has something for him in her bag. She proudly pulls out 2 mangas and her husband lights up. The couple eats the sweet treat and the brunette comments on how empty his stomach was. His wife chuckles and he questions her. Resting her head against Taiyou, the blonde explains that she's just happy to be able to sit next to her husband at work. The two are exhausted but happy. Finally, Fuki suggests they grab some ramen once he's done and he agrees. A new day begins at the company. The employees are excited about a new presence. A man in a suit announces the arrival of a new member of the design team. He explains that they met her at an event and asks everyone to treat her well. The newcomer introduces herself as Rumika Nishino and tells everyone to go easy on her. Fuki thinks that since it's come to this, there's only one solution. She assigns Tanaka the responsibility of looking after the newcomer. The team leader gives some instructions to the new hire, and Tanaka is already thinking that she's pretty cute. The two sit down and he asks Rumiko what she knows how to do. She responds that she's an expert in the field and can do almost everything. Not putting much faith in the young woman, Tanaka assigns her a simple task. The girl doesn't take long to finish it. The blonde is surprised and admits that when he joined the company, it took him an entire day to complete that task. Rumiko, already feeling at ease, teases her colleague. Her boldness leaves Tanaka somewhat incredulous. He's already quite annoyed with the newcomer, who asks him for a more complex task. The young man sighs and gives her another assignment, which she also claims is very simple. An hour later, the girl rests her party balloons on the desk. She whines, saying she doesn't know how to proceed with the task. Tanaka then realizes that she only knows how to act confident, not actually do the work. Now it's his turn to tease the newbie and offer to help her. Hurting Rumika's ego, he tells her that she can ask about anything she doesn't know how to do. The girl finally gives in and actually asks for help, calling him by a nickname to the blonde's irritation. Every mouse click is torture. Tanaka is already exhausted from the newcomer's presence. Sitting beside him, she asks how old he is. He replies that he is a young 25-year-old man. All he can think about is how hard it is to mentor someone who asks so many questions. A familiar presence catches his attention. Fuki asks the blonde how the day's task is going. The young man says he hasn't finished yet, and she finds the delay strange since he usually finishes quickly. Rumika notices her mentor's behavior and becomes thoughtful. Sometime later, the workday comes to an end. Tanaka managed to finish his task on time. He stops and realizes that Rumika hasn't asked him anything since Fuki's visit. The blonde is stunned when he discovers that the newbie didn't do anything for the rest of the day, and she says she tried to research a solution but couldn't find one. The girl looks frustrated and the young man asks why she didn't ask him anything. Tanaka then asks if she was worried that Fuki would get mad at her mentor. To the newbie's surprise, he calls her an idiot. The young man, a bit embarrassed, says that helping newcomers is also part of his job. He praises Rumika's first day and tells her she can go home. The girl stands up from her chair. She bows in thanks and says thank you to Tanaka for his guidance, using respectful language instead of the nickname. He smiles at her and says it was nothing. The blonde chooses this moment to hit on Fuki, who immediately rejects him. The respect Rumika had just gained for him vanishes instantly, and she goes back to using the nickname. It's the company's year-end party where relationships between employees are prohibited. A commotion breaks out when someone comments that it's getting hot. A certain familiar blonde starts unbuttoning her blouse in public. Face to face with 2 enormous cushions, Taiyou says he has been put in a terrible situation. Blushing and tipsy, Fuki asks him to tell his wife that he's taking her home. A few hours earlier, everyone had gathered to drink at the bar. A lot of beer was going around. The engineering team was lively in their own space. Taiyou praised his colleagues' performance throughout the year and made a toast of tea. A colleague asked if the design team was in the room next door. The team leader confirmed and said the company had rented the entire bar. He stopped mid-sip when his subordinate suggested they check out what Fuki was like when drunk. Threateningly, Taiyou said that was a bad idea. He reminded his colleague that the woman was married and gave him a scolding. A female colleague sitting next to the brunette then asked him what his wife was like. The young man thought for a moment about how to answer, and in the end, he showered his wife with compliments. The entire team noticed how deeply in love he was. The colleague then said that Taiyou's wife sounded perfect and that she wanted to meet her. In the next room, another conversation was happening. Fuki asked Rumika if she had adapted to the company now that she had been working there for some time. Proudly, the former newbie said she was already completely accustomed. Tanaka immediately exposed her and gossiped that Rumika had messed up that very day. The younger girl watched as someone served themselves some sake, and Akine advised her that it was no big deal. Making mistakes in youth helps build life experience. Fuyuki questioned if the brunette was only saying that because Rumiko wasn't her subordinate, while the newbie asked what the writer was drinking. The brunette then offered some of her warm sake to the newcomer. Tanaka was already saying that Rumiko wouldn't be able to handle the drink. The girl didn't care. Almost immediately, the young woman collapsed, but she still challenged her former mentor, pointing out that he was the only one drinking beer. The newbie asked if he couldn't handle alcohol. As he insisted that he could, Akine lamented the wasted sake. Rubika and Tanaka were bickering when Fuyuki thought about how well they got along. She stood up and said she was going to the bathroom. The woman realized she had drunk too much. She saw one of Taiyou's colleagues leaving the other room, and she thought about sneaking a peek at her husband's work gathering. The blonde saw him smiling with another woman. Fuyuki immediately felt jealous of their closeness, but she did nothing. Then she heard Taiyou say that she was cute and that he would take her home. That was when the blonde snapped. Hearing laughter, she turned around and stormed back to her own work party. When she arrived, she didn't even greet the team. She grabbed the sake bottle and chugged it in one go, to Akine's horror. Fuyuki didn't even stop to breathe. The brunette called her name, concerned, and with an excited smile, she said she would be staying for a little while in the other room's gathering. That day, the forecast predicted a rainy night. As they walked through the streets, Fuyuki told her husband that sometimes they could just stay home and that Christmas was coming. Then she saw a Santa Claus handing out presents to children, and she got an idea. Fuyuki told Taiyou to head home first. She wanted to stop somewhere before returning. Night fell on their apartment building and Christmas was approaching. The Christmas dinner was already set on the table. Taiyou went to greet his wife, and when he saw her, he was at a loss for words. She revealed his Santa-inspired outfit and seemed very proud of her short dress. The woman showed off every angle of her outfit, saying she wanted something that could only be done on a Christmas at home. Taiyou loved the dress. Fuyuki said she had wanted to give her husband a sack full of sweets like Santa's, but she forgot. Taiyou told her that it was pretty close already. Then Fuyuki looked outside. Through the window, the couple saw that it had started to snow. Her husband said he thought it would be really cold, and the blonde caught his attention. With a smile, she said it was a white Christmas night. Taiyou stopped and thought for a moment. Feeling emotional, he thanked Santa Claus and said this was the best Christmas present of all. Fuyuki asked him if he really liked snow that much. It was Christmas in Japan. Back in the present, Taiyou's team was drinking and snacking. The door to the room opened, and to the brunette's despair, a very drunk Fuyuki apologized for barging in. He looked shocked at her presence, and to make matters worse, she started unbuttoning her blouse. The blonde stumbled toward her husband and asked him to tell his wife that he was taking her home. That was when the brunette realized that his wife was drunk. While his colleagues watched, he asked Fuyuki to drink some water. She refused. His wife told Taiyou to do what she had asked. Crying, she also claimed she had heard him say the same thing to his colleague. The brunette then pointed to a poster with pudding that said to take the sweets home. Fuyuki started processing the situation with her drunken brain and realized the huge mistake she had made. She began laughing and said she had misunderstood everything. Her husband was confused but relieved. At that moment, Akine arrived to save the day and apologize for her friend. The brunette carried Fuyuki away, understanding that all this secrecy was to keep their relationship hidden from the rest of the company. She finally pulled Taiyou's wife out of the room. A deafening silence fell over the office, and suddenly the entire engineering team started commenting on how drunk Fuyuki was absolutely adorable. The team leader sipped from his mug in silence. At the bar entrance, Akine was still carrying her friend. She told the blonde not to fall asleep on her shoulder and said she would take her home. The brunette heard the sound of the car engine parking. The driver was her husband, who apologized for making them wait. Akine told him that he hadn't even taken 5 minutes to arrive. He then justified himself, saying he was keeping an eye on his wife so that no stranger would try to hit on her. The said wife called him an idiot. The trio drove through the night in silence. The brunette lit a cigarette. When questioned by Masato, she told him he could stop the car if it bothered him that much. Her husband says he doesn't mind, but some people don't like the smell when they're riding as passengers. She pauses, thinks for a moment, and says she's going to keep smoking anyway. Masato asks why. The brunette then states that it's to repel him from other women. The doctor smiles at his wife. He says that sometimes she's a little stupid too, much to her irritation. But he adds that he won't be giving rides to other women anymore because of her. Sometime later, it's late at night in the couple's apartment. Fuyuki is already asleep in bed. Taiyou wakes his wife to remind her to remove her makeup. The blonde smiles sweetly and welcomes him back, but he looks very serious. He pushes her down onto the bed. He gets on top of her and leaves a bite on her neck. She asks tearfully if he's mad, and he responds that of course he is. The brunette states that he should be the only one to see her being cute. Fuyuki's heart races at his declaration. He starts saying that no one else can see her being adorable, but then he passes out halfway through his words. The blonde asks if he was drinking too, which is a problem since he can't handle alcohol. Adjusting herself in bed, she laments that Taiyou is making her wait so long and that she's way too excited to sleep. So the video ends here. If you don't want to miss the next part, activate the notification bell, and see you next time on Tob's channel.